This is the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Brueski,
featuring former FBI Special Agent and Chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program, Robin Dreeke.
Ruby Frank, the prominent YouTube personality known for her channel 8 Passengers, and her business partner Jody Hildebrandt arrested following a distressing 911 call from a neighbor. The call described a 12-year-old boy emaciated and covered in wounds arriving at the neighbor's door, his wrists and ankles bound with duct tape. The boy managed to escape from Hildebrandt's home, where both of them were at, Ruby and Frankie. Rather, I guess my question, number one, I look at this and go, how? What kind of psychological factors drove these mothers, allegedly, to engage in this type of abusive behavior with their children while documenting their lives to the world? Now, they didn't show the kids duct taped on camera or anything like that. They'd often make weird kind of off jokes about abuse, but never necessarily truly presented it on camera. How, why, what's going on in someone's mind that they're taking it this far when you have a spotlight on you?
First, overall response is, this is what happens when you fall in love with your own voice.
Yes.
It's classic. And again, I'm not a professional clinician, so all I can do is take the data points that we're being exposed to by the media right now. But as it looks, we are seeing a very common case because we all do things like this, but not to this extreme. And so here's what I think, if I was having some conjecture, has happened. So here's someone that has enough insecurities in her life that she needs a lot of outside validation for who she is. That's why when people go on social media, ask yourself, are they being an informer or a me-former? Informers are people that are providing service to others to make their lives better, and they're not self-promoted in any sort of way. And everyone tends to ride a balance between those two to try to keep that balance in that dichotomy and balance. So most likely, I didn't look at any of her posts before this. Most likely, she's the type of person that's a me-former. Look at me, look at my kids, look at my family. Here's the photos of me.
Yeah.
Then you have a parenting style because of how you're brought up through your own life arc that is a stricter parenting style. I mean, you and I are similar generations. When I was growing up, it was tough love. Yeah. No doubt. Not to the extremes that are going on here, but when it starts out as tough love, but you're surrounded by people that might be second guessing your tough love, you're going to be seeking validation. So what might you do, especially if you're a me-former on social media? Well, let me put a few things out there and grab a group of people, of like-minded people. Remember, we said this earlier, was that people love to consume information that validates their own self-opinion. So if I post videos of my tough love, good old-fashioned parenting skills out there, and I start getting likes, my self-opinion of myself and how I'm parenting gets validated. And so you start feeling better about yourself. And then another parent, even with maybe a degree in psychology, comes along that happens to think the same thing. We'll partner up with her. And so now we have not just strangers giving me likes and a following. I actually got a partner in crime that actually thinks better. And so to me, this is like watching a NASCAR gladiator arena at the same time, but using children as gladiators.
Yeah.
Because I'm really curious about the people that are not just close and watching us. Who's watching these videos and for what reason? Were you trying to get parenting skills or are you watching the train wreck?
Yeah.
And so what happened was, I think we had a massive groupthink going on here where they would do something and escalate it a little bit more. In other words, they put that frog in the water, and it was nice and cold, and it started slowly boiling it. They didn't even realize they're boiling a frog till the thing just popped and died. And that happens when you have massive groupthink going on. If you're a social media phenom for all the crazy things you're doing, it's unique, it's standing out, and you have all this big viewership, you start lying yourself and fall in love with your own voice. Again, that is my armchair quarterback pseudo psychoscience saying that's what I think happened.
Well, it makes you wonder who is going along with all of this. And that's where I start to wonder about Dad, who's not been charged with anything. He did appear in some of her videos here and there, very much just, hi, I'm a blob of flesh. I exist. And that was kind of it. And sometimes he'd have to say a line or two, which you could tell was, exactly what she said. You say this at this time. And other than that, she was the star. She was the narcissist queen of this one. And he was kind of there. But at the same time, you're the dad. If this sort of stuff is going on in your home, and his attorney says that these things are not going on under his watch, that she had been with her friend Hildebrandt all summer with the kids, and he had no clue these sort of things were going on. I do have to wonder, did these things just start happening when Jody and Ruby were hanging out together and cohabitating together? Or there's been a lot of stories here, even from the kids, that these things were going on far before that in the home where dad was present. Is dad oblivious to this, or is dad, almost an abuse victim, if you will, going along with these sort of things, but at the same time an adult and does hold some responsibilities if he's allowing it to continue?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think you have some abuse there. You have shaming that everyone's probably, the duo was ganging up on him, shaming him into not saying anything. I think they, at an early stage, because again, I don't think they started out saying, hey, we're going to abuse our kids. I think it started out, self-centered, narcissistic, because look at me. And then it kept escalating where it got completely out of control. And what it started happening is you start normalizing bad behavior, which makes it easier to escalate the bad behavior. And the kids, same thing with the kids. They start thinking this is okay and normal. And then we're mentioned earlier, you start getting some elements of trauma bonding going on in here too, with the mothers, with the kids, until one day someone cracks. And when it comes to him, it's a shame he was turning a blind eye to it, maybe shamed away from it. I don't know what's going on there because we don't have a lot of data points on it, but we're seeing a lot of different elements with these two women that were allowed to get out of control with the kids.
And I guess the question is why. People have had their eye on her for quite some time. There has been a petition to Child Protective Services to look into them, and apparently they did, but didn't find anything enough to make any sort of arrest or change anything prior to what happened here the other week where the child got out and ran to the neighbor's house. Why do you think that is? That if this sort of thing was going on, that there hadn't been anything? I mean, do they need, well, I guess, what is the factor here? What is the line that needs to be crossed for something to happen, to have children taken away or taken to a safe place when you have abuse like this going on?
So I think what we were just saying before, I think what happens is when you start normalizing the behavior and you see the behavior in a public forum, the general person is going to say, well, it must be okay because it's public. Maybe it's just a show. Is it scripted? And so when you are there at the inception, at the beginning, or you trickle in as things keep growing, it becomes a normal behavior until someone becomes aware of it and they come from the outside. In other words, everyone along on the ride for this, every day they're going from 0 to 5 miles an hour, from 5 miles an hour to 7 miles an hour, 7 to 10. So it's a slow escalation. And all of a sudden, when you can go from 0 and look at it at 100 from Child Protective Services, where someone can say, here's what they're doing today, that's when the shock and awe hits someone that actually knows what they're doing and says, this is really wrong. Meanwhile, everyone that was along on the ride, they had no idea the frog was boiling.
You're consuming the Hidden Killers podcast.
Want more? Start binging on all of our true crime podcasts right now through Apple Podcasts and get an ad-free experience when you sign up to be a True Crime Today Premium Plus member exclusively on Apple Podcasts.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast dropping soon.
Press subscribe now.